Everyone, welcome to this episode of Enterprise Alchemy. As always, I'm Ant today, joined by Ashley Cole. Ashley, thank you very much for being here, mate.
Thank
Appreciate
you for having me.
Oh, mate, it's a pleasure. Now, we'll get kind of straight into it. As I said to you before, like when we first spoke, your story just kind of blew me away a little bit. And so I thought, this is something that we should talk about. I know you've been, this is something that you've spoken about, and recently on the BBC and stuff, but maybe for the audience, just give us a little bit of, that you feel comfortable, right? There's nothing, if you don't feel comfortable, there's nothing, you don't have to say anything. But just from your childhood to now, what that story was that we talked about.
Yeah, sure. So yes, I'm Ashley. I am 33 years old, and I currently live in east of England. So gosh, let me start from, where do I start from? I'll start from just a general kind of background of my life. So I grew up in your, you could say, average two-parent household. I have two other siblings. And my family was very, very much involved in the church and Christianity. So my dad later became a pastor. So literally every Sunday I was at church. I was playing the keyboard, I was singing. I also did my own events as well, which gathered around annually around 300-400 young people, just to experience gospel music. So
right.
Yeah, so that was really, really fun. That was in my kind of late teens. And then, I kind of fell into the world of work. So I became a HR professional. So I guess that's what a lot of people saw for a long time.
Okay.
But
shout out as a musician, though. And shout out to the other musicians out there. Sorry, mate, go on.
No, little plug. So my stage name is Remain.
Very good.
Yeah. So I, on and off, back in the day, was doing music. At the moment now, I'm trying to pursue it a little bit more and do like little local gigs.
Right.
So yeah, that's also been a passion and a feature in my life. So yeah, all that was going on. So when I was... I would have been 26 is when I started to have flashbacks about some traumatic events that's happened in my life. About 25, 26, it started to kind of hit me really, really hard. So I was sexually abused at the age of 7, around 6 and 7. And that went on for almost a year. And that's something that I didn't share with no one. For about 19 years, I just kind of kept that just to myself. And it was around 25, 26, it really started to eat me up.
Right.
Yeah.
What was there an event or something that had happened at that time that sort of triggered that memory or?
Yes.
Okay.
Yeah. So I remember sitting at my grandma's, I was on the dining table at that time. Right. And 2 family members were there. And then there was like a big breaking news about a celebrity at that time who had abused a child.
Right.
And I remember my family members talking about how traumatic it would have been for that child who's gone through that. And I can't imagine what that child's gone through. And I think for the first time I heard, firstly, someone who was an adult or just anyone talk about sexual abuse, child sexual abuse, and then also how awful it was.
Right.
I knew growing up that I was violated. I knew what happened to me, but I didn't realize how bad it was, which is kind of really, really weird to say. I didn't realize how awful it was. I knew that it was completely wrong and it was, awful, but I didn't realize someone could be sentenced for this long, and because it's that bad. I didn't, those things for some reason didn't connect. And I think that's because I suppressed it. I just tried to carry on with life. I just, it was just one of those things that happened to me, and, you just kind of move on. And maybe when I get older, I'll forget about it. And I won't have those flashbacks. I won't have those dreams. My depression will somehow just disappear. And
right.
I just thought everything would just kind of fall into place. And, I would have a normal kind of life. But yeah, it was that time when I saw it in the news and I sat around and I heard people talk about how bad it was, is when I realized that, yeah, no, this is, um, what I went through is, yeah, there's no excuse for it. There's no reason for it. It's disgusting. And then something needs to be done. But also it then triggered a lot of flashbacks. So I started to see things more vividly. So it would be smells that would take me back to what I saw and experienced. It'll be
Right.
seeing someone or places or whatever it was. I just saw had a lot of vivid memories and dreams that came back around 26.
Wow. And
Yeah.
so prior to that, I suppose, that sort of real, like you said, vivid kind of realization. You mentioned the depression will go away. So like now that you you look back, let's say on before 26, but because that's a while after you become, let's say at least technically an adult, right? 18 or whatever.
Yeah.
So were you kind of feeling other feelings that, before you kind of had this realization, but you didn't realize where it was kind of all coming from?
Yeah.
Or it was just like you were fine and then out of the blue, you were just like, oh my God, no, this is a repressed memory.
I would have a lot of nightmares.
Right.
I would have flashbacks. Like I said, I knew I was violated. I knew something had happened, but I was also actively trying to, I don't know, try to keep them away.
Okay.
Also, I think at that time as well, when I was very heavily involved in my faith, and at that time I was very, very busy.
Right.
And I don't know, even now, I don't know if I was over making myself busy to try and, not think about certain things. But in terms of like depression, feeling low, anxiety and things like that, and panic attacks, that's kind of always been a feature in my life.
Okay.
Low self-esteem has always been a feature. I mean, there was a point in time where I would wear 3 kind of layers of trousers or like layers of tops. I would go to school with like just different layers on. I would wear like baggy clothes. I didn't want no one to see any part of my body. My self-esteem, my confidence was very, very low. I probably overcompensated in some certain areas at certain times in my life. So yeah, it was very much always there. But I think faith at that time, I translated it into, it's almost like the devil, or it was something that I could possibly pray away.
Right.
Or, just keep praying and God will kind of deal with it. So I think that's how I dealt with it at that time.
Yeah, I mean, it's a significant, my heart goes out to you, man.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you were finally able to bring this up with your family,
yeah,
because that takes a lot, right?
Yeah.
That's that's huge.
Yeah.
How did that, were they, how did that process kind of unfold? Was it what you expected, or I'm just curious as to how, even if people out there are thinking about this kind of stuff and maybe it's resonating or hitting them, and they're in that sort of state of, wow, I don't know if I can share this because this is not only painful for you, but maybe painful for others to hear, and you're like, I don't want to burden them or whatever, right?
Yeah.
So how did that kind of process unfold for you?
Yeah. And you used the word burden, and I think that's, I always said to myself that I'm going to take this to the grave. Right. And so the person who abused me always said to me, like, this is our secret, don't tell no one. And even in my adult life and my later years, I still felt like it was okay to keep it a secret. So my parents, my siblings, I've always said I'm going to, take it to the grave. I'm not going to tell no one. And then the point when I did, and again, this is also, even though I knew it was bad, what happened to me, for example, okay, I'll say this. So my dad was dropping me off somewhere. So I was in the car and he was dropping me off. And I just said to him, I was sexually abused when I was around 6, 7 for about a year by this person who was known to my family, by this person. And I can talk to you about it later. you don't say that. Like, I've just literally just dropped a bomb to my dad, and then just thought he'll just drop me off, and I'll talk to him the next day about it. He broke down in the car, and then he's like, "No, we're going home, and you have to speak to your mom," because he couldn't hold it. So I went home, spoke to my mom and my dad, and then later on spoke to my siblings about it, and yeah, they just broke down. I can't imagine what it feels like as a parent to hear that, because as a parent, I mean, from what I can just imagine is that you're there to protect, you're there
absolutely.
to nurture and provide and essentially protect, aren't you? That's what your role is. So I can only imagine that you'd feel that you've had some parts to play in it. And I think that my parents at that time very, very much felt that. They articulated that as well. My thing was that, there wouldn't have been anything you could have done.
Right.
Like, there wouldn't have been anything you could have done. So that was hard for them to come to terms with. So that was very emotional. And then around the same time, in that year, my dad was then diagnosed with motor neuron disease.
Oh, yeah.
So that's a muscle wasting disease. And then he was given 6 months to live. So we were told that he wouldn't make it until New Year's,
Right.
potentially make it till Christmas. So they were dealing with the news of I was abused, and then dealing with
Grief,
the news of my dad is going to deteriorate. And at that time, he was a pastor. He was working in a school. He loved music. That's where I got the passion from.
Okay, yeah.
So he was a DJ as well.
Right.
He traveled over the UK. He was had a big role in the community as well.
Right.
And yeah, to know that we was told that he's going to lose his mobility, so he won't be able to walk, talk. He won't be able to swallow, eat, or anything like that. Just little things we don't even take for granted. So that was a big news to take. So yeah, it was a lot for my family at that time. Yeah.
Right. And one sort of more thing, and I know this must have just taken. I can't imagine, the complexities, like you said, if it's somebody who's known to the family. But then that, as I understand, actually had to go through, you had to endure a court case.
Yes. Which was something I was battling on doing.
Right.
And I remember, so I was living in Birmingham at that time, and I remember, and this wasn't the first time it had happened to me, where I'm just feeling just so low, so depressed, that I just need to the way I deal with it is just to walk. And I just need to kind of just walk it out and just kind of get the emotions, the chemicals just moving. So I went on my walk, and I was just in tears, and it must have been like 2, 3 in the morning on a random weekday. And I was just in tears, just weeping. And I was like, I can't live like this. Like,
Right.
I feel like I'm stunting my life. I'm stunting my growth. I know that going to the police or reporting for people isn't a way of closure.
Right.
Because I've always known that, you can go to the police and first of all, they might just shut it down. You can go through the whole process and the person's not found guilty, even though the person's done it.
Right.
So it's not always going to be closure
Mhm.
for people. But for me, I just needed to go through I feel like I needed to go through a legal process for a type of closure. So that was difficult to do. So I remember I called 101, I think it is,
Right.
the non-emergency line. And then they asked me to go down to the police station. So they booked me in to go down to the station not long after that. So I had written down everything that happened, everything I could remember, and different events and different times, different days. Just, yeah, it took me ages to write things down. And I went to the police station. And I remember I went there and I says, I'm here to for an interview, or to be interviewed rather. I sat down, I waited, and the time passed, and I waited. The time passed, and the time passed, and then no one turned up.
Right.
So the police, or the investigator, I don't know who should have been, who was meant to investigate me, interview me, didn't turn up. Apparently there was an admin issue. And I remember leaving that station again, just feeling so broken because I was
Yeah, I
like,
can
it took
imagine.
me so much. And so it took me a long time to get to this point. And it felt like, again, didn't feel heard, didn't feel seen. It wasn't that important. Um, I then a few weeks later I said, no, I'm going to carry on. So I had an interview, an investigation, and I just said what I had to say, and then that then started the process, and the process was about 2 years, and it was so difficult. Yeah, nothing could have prepared me. They did prepare me. I had a support worker that was great. I had counselling for the whole process, which I would definitely advise anyone to have. If they offer a support worker, say yes. If you can get counselling, definitely, because it's things like, you're at work and then the police are calling you because you need to provide certain evidence or you need to clarify something, or I remember being at work and they said that we need all your data from Facebook or your data from Instagram or your messages that were sent between this year and that year. We need that to be sent to CPS. So it's a lot of, it's a lot on your emotions.
God.
It's a lot of waiting, um, a lot of delays. It was a very, very hard time. Very hard time.
Right. And so, in the end, as I understand, there was a guilty verdict. Is that right?
Yes. So, the person. So before that, the person kept pleading not guilty, not guilty, not guilty. So I was told it was going to go to trial, and I was given a date, which was just like, have to go through and face that.
Imagine,
So that I wasn't looking forward to that. So also around that time, my dad's health was starting to really deteriorate. And then just before the trial, he admitted and pleaded guilty to all the charges. I think it was 5 or 7 charges that was against him. And he pleaded guilty to those and was sentenced. Sadly, though, my dad, who was really encouraging for the whole process, he passed 6 months before. It's I believe that anyone who's passed is still there. So I know that he's there, but I think he would have loved to have kind of heard that and known that news, being here in the flesh. So, but he pleaded guilty, and he was sentenced. I don't know how long he was sentenced for. I didn't want to know. I think that would have just annoyed me because I'm just like, he just can't really put a time on it, because I feel like he's robbed me of so much years. That experience has robbed me of so much years. I don't think any amount of time could have cut it for me. So that's the only one thing I didn't want to hear. But I'm just glad that there was, for me, justice was served. And I know a lot of people who report, especially historical abuse, where there's not really much evidence to go off.
A lot of times passed.
Exactly. I feel really heard, really seen, and really thankful that, justice was served, definitely.
Yeah. So in terms of if there's someone else or other people out there watching this or listening, whatever, that, might themselves be in that sort of a position or know somebody, and I know it's different for every person, right? So it's impossible to say, well, it's this or it's that. It's not a black or white type thing. There's a nuance there. What advice would you give them?
Yeah, I would say speak to someone. I think if I knew that there were so many services out there, so many organizations that are anonymous, for one, that there are people that would listen, that I think I probably would have spoken sooner. Not necessarily meaning that I probably reported it sooner or spoke to my family, who knows. But I think if I knew about organizations, I would have probably had spoken sooner. Even if it's your GP and you want to start there, you don't have to always go into the nitty-gritty of what happened to you, even if it's just a thing of, I just need help with my mental health, or I'm feeling like, I'm going through depression, or I feel like my self-esteem's low, and then have the conversation start there. At least do that. I think definitely try and reach out to someone. I think that'd be my main thing.
Right.
That would definitely be my main thing. And then also just work at your own pace. Don't feel like you have to rush into anything that you don't feel you're able to handle. And just report it and just take it professional advice.
Yeah, right. So moving to, I suppose, it's terrible, right? Nobody deserves to go through what you've been through. It's bloody awful in Aussie vernacular.
Yeah, it is, definitely.
It's bloody awful.
Yeah.
But, have you are there any kind of positive, not positive, but let's say like learning points or things that you've realized about yourself, perhaps, like even just being able to have the fortitude to go through a police process. That's a hell of a process, right? As you described, like that takes a toll on anybody.
Yeah.
Never mind all the complexities about it being, in and around like people you know what I mean, as opposed to an unknown assailant or things of that nature. So, things that perhaps made you stronger or made you the person you are today.
I think it's just been such a journey. I've had to get to this point. So healing for me is a journey. So I've accepted that I'm always going to have to like maintain this healing, or just maintain just kind of growing and remaining strong. So what's got me up until this point is, like I said, speaking to those organizations, those third parties who can support. So whether that's counseling, my GP, support organizations, medication, depending on, your upbringings or your opinions on medication. I grew up, again, like I said, in the church. And I've been to a few churches. Some churches are against medication or don't promote it because, God is your healer.
Right.
I would challenge that if that is you out there. Medication can be such a support to get you through certain things. And just, find things that work for you. So things that worked for me was also journaling and diary writing and writing in my diaries, and challenging my thoughts, challenging my thinking. Some of the things that I realized that I needed to work on for myself was my low self-esteem.
Right.
And my lack of confidence that I didn't have.
Right.
And
that's something you can take control of.
Yeah. And that's what I can take control of.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Challenging those different narratives. And then also just realizing that you can really steer your life, and you can have control of your own life and your own destiny. To some extent, not trying to get into any kind of debates.
No, absolutely.
Predestination, that kind of stuff. But
that's a whole nother deep philosophical rabbit hole.
That's another podcast.
Yeah.
But you can definitely have a say in your narrative and the direction of your life. I truly believe that. And then also, if you've gone through the abuse and you're here today and you're listening to this today, you've gone through probably, and I hope the hardest thing you'll ever go through in your life, and you've survived it. So that already shows that you're strong, and you're strong enough to have gone through that, and you're here and you're strong. So it's reminding yourself of those little things as well. I think it's just remembering who you are. I'm a strong person. I'm someone who is resilient. I'm someone who is taking control of my narrative.
Mm-hmm.
and just trying to explore who I am and unlearn a lot of the things that I'm not. So yeah.
And I think like some of the themes you're talking about there, right, to me is actually like really powerful, and sometimes people can kind of just pass them over, as in, oh yeah. But for example, you know, you can take control now. The thing that I'm hearing as well, right, is you're so open, but also saying, look, I'm not perfect at things, and not everything happens at once. Like you said, take your time.
Yeah.
Do it at your pace. It doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing. And I think that's really powerful, because doesn't have to go from today it's a problem, tomorrow it's fixed.
Exactly. And I think with any type of trauma, like it shapes you, and it's always going to be a part of you, and that's okay. And it's just giving yourself compassion to grow. It's giving yourself space to grow, and yeah, just take your time in the process. It's a journey. Like I said, I don't think I think most things in life, there's not really a kind of I've arrived. It's always a journey. It's a continuation. And I definitely believe that with like healing, it's a journey, it's a process, and it's how I see it is that I'm literally undoing one lie at a time. So
yeah, right, yeah,
for
yeah.
me,
Because I mean, it's such a thing that people can go, oh yeah, it's a journey, but and almost skip over it.
Yeah,
but it's like it's actually no that actually means something. It means that you are moving continually.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
And so we just do little bits at a time.
Yeah.
And if we chip away at it,
absolutely,
over time, we can make magic happen. But don't beat yourself up.
Yeah.
If it doesn't happen tomorrow.
Yeah.
Or if, tomorrow you say, I'm not as strong as I was today, so I can't do it. Well, that's okay.
That is okay.
You can pick it up.
Yeah.
And I think that's a super positive message.
Yeah.
Mate, one other final thing to change gears slightly. Sure. I know you were talking just before we went on air, and you're keen musician.
Yes.
Getting into that a bit more.
Yes.
Singing. So tell us a little bit. Stage name, what sort of music do you do? Are you gigging? Yes. Fill us in. Fill the audience in.
Yes. So my middle name is Romain. So I was named after my granddad. That's his name.
Right.
And he loved music. Apparently he was a singer in Jamaica. There's no evidence, but he did like to sing and hum.
Okay.
And he was good. He was in tune. So I've taken that middle name as my stage name. So Romain, Ramaen.
Okay.
So yeah, I recently moved to Peterborough. And again, recently just found like musicians that accompany me, and then also a singer as well who I sing with every now and then. So yeah, got a few things lined up. I'll be at a food festival in the next few weeks. That's 2 days, and that's a few hundred people there. So that's quite exciting. So yeah, the genre is like neo soul, R&B soul.
Nice. Yeah, I'm a bass player, so yeah, neo soul is. I love that shit. Yeah,
nice bass lines.
Yeah, absolutely. Cool, man. All right. Well, Ashley, I think that kind of nicely draws us to a close on this episode. Yes. I must say, man, thank you for just coming in and being so open and honest. Like, it's not easy, and the stuff you've gone through is awful, and I wouldn't wish it on anyone. So the fact that you're able to sort of come through that and now talk openly, and hope that whether it's doing stuff with us or obviously on a much bigger scale at the BBC, talking to them, get the message out there so that even if it helps one person that says, hey, this helped me to move forward, I think that's a really great thing. Yeah. So I really appreciate it, man.
No, thank you for having me. And again, like allowing me to share a message like this, because it's all about sharing stories. And if you can touch one person and they can then touch another people.
Exactly.
That's how it carries on. So thank you.
You're a champion. Thanks, mate. All right. Well, that brings us to the end, everybody, of this episode of Enterprise Alchemy. As always, I'm Ant, and thanks, Ashley, for joining us. All right, guys, we'll see you on the next one.